Hello Airfix fans and welcome back to another episode of Flight Deck. This month has been a busy one filled with surprises, events and of course, model kits. First up, a surprise announcement. To mark the arrival of the new North American F-86F Sabre, we're pairing this exciting release with our latest limited edition collector coin. Paying homage to the lead scheme, the United States Air Force aerobatic team Arctic Gladiators from 1955. Capturing this truly distinctive and colourful decal scheme, this one-of-a-kind coin sports the 720th Fighter Bomber Squadron standard silver and red nose of the North American Sabre. The 5-colour stripes and squadron emblem top and centre, with the Airfix logo on the reverse. On entering service with the United States Air Force in 1949, the North American F-86 Sabre would have the distinction of not only being America's first swept-wing fighter, but also the fastest fighter aircraft in the world at the time, a true aviation classic. With only 500 limited edition coins available, we recommend grabbing this bundle quickly. Once they're gone, they're gone. Next up, the Airfix team attended the Battle of Britain Air Show at IWM Duxford. We got to talk to David, a pilot part of the British Heritage flight team, about the Hurricane on display.
This aircraft is registered as G Hurry, H-U-R-I. It's built in 1942 in Canada, and it's been flying in this country since the late 1980s, I think, when it was actually restored. It's currently wearing the markings of 302 Squadron, but the markings are different on each side, and I'll explain why later. As you can see, it hasn't got a rudder on it at the moment. Unfortunately, the aircraft went in for its annual servicing at the start of this year, and it was noted that some bearings on the rudder needed replacing. They took the fabric off to have a closer inspection and discovered that there was even more work that needed doing to the actual structure of the rudder. So unfortunately, it's not been able to fly this year, which is a real shame. But we're hoping to get the rudder back fairly soon and get it back in the air. For those of you who don't know much about the Hurricane, this particular design of aircraft is basically almost in fact 1930s traditional design, in the sense that it's a metal structure covered in wood to give it the right shape, and then covered in fabric. So if you can see this is actually fabric, so is this, and the whole of the rear fuselage, if you move around here, is actually covered in fabric. If you look under there, you can actually see the underlying structure, which is just metal tubes squared up at the ends, and they're all joined together with these joints here, little brackets and fixings. The reason for that being they didn't want to weld joins, so that any repairs they had to do would need welding equipment, because the last thing you want to do is approach one of these machines, which is wooden fabric, with a blowtorch or some welding equipment. On this side of the aircraft you can see the markings. WX is 302 Squadron. The individual code letter for this aircraft is D for Delta, and the serial number, you can actually read that, is P3935. This represents an aircraft from 302 Squadron that was scrambled from Duxford on the afternoon of September the 15th, 1940. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I think they were scrambled. This particular machine was the last one airborne of the squadron. It was Red 3. The pilot flying this machine, named Kowalski, he claimed a victory over a Dornier 17. He got shot up, but he managed to get back to Duxford and land safely. The markings on the other side are slightly different. They are WXE, and the serial number is different, because that represents an aircraft that was flown by a Polish chap called Schlopik, was his surname. He didn't survive that sortie. He was shot down and killed that afternoon. Whereas Kowalski, flying on this side of the aircraft, he survived the Battle of Britain, he survived the war, he settled in this country after the war, and he lived to, I think he died in the mid-1980s, something like that. So it just goes to show how small the margins are in a particular sortie, in a particular battle, in a particular war. One chap died, one didn't. The Hurricane is, although it was designed at the same sort of time as the Spitfire, the Hurricane first flew November 35, Spitfire March 1936. The Hurricane is a traditional design, and it sits quite high off the ground. So whereas the Spitfire sits lower down, you can actually climb onto the wing root of the Spitfire quite easily without a step. The Hurricane is a bit too far up, especially if it's wet. So what the Hawker engineers did was they came up with this really great footstep, which if you pull this little lever down here, the little footstep springs down and the little flap opens, which is proper 1930s British engineering. It's all under the bungee cord system inside the cockpit. So you can now climb up onto the wing root. Of course, you don't want to fly with that down, so and you close this flap, the footstep springs up automatically, which is amazing in the days before computers. So, again, this is a 1942 built aircraft, so it has metal skinned wings. The first few hundred Hurricanes off the production line in the 1930s, the first production batch, actually had fabric covered wings as well. In fact, there's one example hanging from the ceiling in the Science Museum in London that is actually from the first production batch. That has actually got fabric covered wings. But the control surfaces are fabric. As you move round, you can see the leading edge of the wing, we have red patches. These cover up the armour. This is a Hurricane 12, which is basically a Canadian-built Mark II B version. So it has 12 machine guns, 6 in either wing. Now we don't have any utility for carrying machine guns around these days. So in this particular machine, the gun bays, the guns have been removed and they've been replaced with something far more useful, which is a fuel tank. So we've got an extra 30 gallons of fuel in each of the gun bays. The Hurricane is quite good from a servicing point of view, in the sense if you need to transport the aircraft by road or by trailer, it's quite easy. So you simply, this is where the wing actually is a separate piece. The wing root section is actually part of the fuselage structure, so the undercarriage stays with the fuselage. You can take the wings off and transport the airplane quite easily. It's different to a Spitfire. The Spitfire, the undercarriage is hinged here, but the wing comes off at the wing root. So you have to trestle the fuselage, jack it up, take the wings and the undercarriage off. You've now got a fuselage which has got no wheels on it, which is quite difficult to move. The main fuel tanks are in the wing root section here. You have 33 gallons in each of the wing roots, and there's another fuel tank just ahead of the cockpit, which is called the reserve fuel tank, which will feed the aircraft engine by gravity if the engine-driven fuel pump fails. The undercarriage on a Hurricane is great. It's nice and wide, gives you a nice stability on the ground. It retracts inwards, which is good. But the brakes are very light. They're just pneumatic air brakes. They're not really designed for stopping. They're just designed for taxiing. Propeller blades on a Hurricane. This particular one's got a Packard Merlin in it. It's a Canadian-built aircraft. It's got an American-built Merlin engine, Packard Merlin, which is out about 1,350 horsepower, I think, something like that. And these propeller blades are actually metal, unlike the Spitfire blades, which are wooden. The engine itself is liquid cooled, so there's a big tank. It's called glycol just ahead of the reserve fuel tank. Pipes come down through the cockpit to the big radiator there. The circular bit inside the radiator is the oil cooler to keep the oil cool. But the Hurricane engine, the coolant runs quite hot. It's usually running at evening cruise just over 90 degrees centigrade, and the pipes go through the cockpit to the engine and back to the radiator, so it gets really hot in the cockpit, especially in summer when the engine's actually running. Not only that, it's very noisy as well. This side is exactly the same as the other side. Just underneath the cockpit there, you can see a little panel. That's actually an escape hatch. It's controlled by a little lever in the cockpit. If you have to bail out of this aircraft, you can jettison the canopy with the lever in the cockpit. The canopy will disappear, and in order to get out of the aircraft easily, you can just pull the lever back and that little panel there just falls away. It's not a door that opens like on a Spitfire, it's just a simple panel. And again, to highlight the fact this is painted as a Polish 302 squadron aircraft, we have the Polish checkerboard symbol. You can see that the code letter is different this side, as I mentioned before, it's Echo rather than Delta. And the serial number is different, P2954. This is the aircraft that Jack Schloepik was actually shot down and killed in 15th September 1940.
A fantastic interview, and thank you to David for giving us such an in-depth tour of the Hurricane. Now a question for you to debate in the comments, Hurricane or Spitfire? Finally, it wouldn't be an episode of Flight Deck if we didn't bring you a list of some of the latest releases. First up, the de Havilland Chipmunk T10 T20, which should be landing on your workbench any day now. RAF Beaufort crews were tasked with flying some of the most dangerous attack missions of the Second World War, with their aircraft often flying into a hail of enemy defence fire. The Mark 1A variant was based on its predecessor, but benefited from increased strengthening and the addition of a Bristol B1 Mark 5 turret. The Bristol Beaufort Mark 1A will be out very soon. By 1943, the RAF needed a dedicated ground attack fighter, and the Typhoon was suited to the role. The powerful engine allowed the aircraft to carry a load of up to 2 1,000-pound bombs. From September 1943, Typhoons could also be armed with 4, 8 or in some cases even 12 60-pound RP-3 rockets. The Hawker Typhoon Mark 1B is heading your way as we speak. If you're interested in any of the kits coming out this month, all the links are in the description below. Well, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode of Flight Deck. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Nathan, over and out.